Hello guys, welcome back to this channel and thanks for viewing this video. Today we are going to talk about key listener interface. So how we can actually implement key listener in our frame or on any container. It can be a panel or a frame or anything else. My project is structured this way. I have two classes. The first one is the main class as usual. In the main method, I'm creating a frame object of type myFrame. Here I have the myFrame constructor. I'm gonna come back to that later on. So if you want to implement the key listener on a particular frame, this is what you need to do. To simply come here and say implement key listener like this. And you will need to import the key listener class. And here you can see that it's showing an error. You click on add on implemented methods. It will automatically add three methods. So the key pressed, key released, and key typed. Okay. So the key pressed method is going to be invoked when a key is pressed down. So all the code that we would write inside here would determine the action that would take place whenever a certain key is pressed down. The key typed method is invoked when a key is typed, and then the key released method is invoked whenever a key or a button is released. So we will come back to these methods later on. So now we are going to declare some GUI components. We're going to declare them globally because we will use these components in the method. So if we declare them in the constructor, we won't be able to use them in the method. So let's do that globally. First one is going to be a button. I will say JButton, BTN, and I will say JLabel, label. All right, so I need to import these classes. So the first one, I will import the JLabel class and then the JButton class. So now in the constructor, this is how my project is looking like. There are certain things that I would need to change here. I would actually remove the flow layout. I'll set it to null. I can also comment park method here. And then I would choose to add the size to this particular frame. I will say set size, and then I will precise the dimension. I'll say 800 for the width and then 600 for the height. All right, so as I was telling you at the beginning, the key listener can be applied on either a frame, a panel, or, some GUI components. So let's start applying this key listener to our frame. So that means that when we click on or we press a button on a certain frame, some actions would happen. So how do you add the key listener to your frame? As usual, you simply say this, and then we'll say add key listener, and then we will say this. So this is because this class is extending or inheriting the JFrame class, and at the same time, it is implementing the key listener. And we are also applying the key listener on this particular frame. So now let's start explaining the three methods. So as we said, if key released is invoked whenever a key or a button is released, all right? So let's add an output statement here. We'll say system.out.println, and let's say this is a key released method, and then we'll add semicolon. So now let's run this. So here we are having our frame, and let me press any key. And then when I release the key, you can see this is a key released method. So it's as simple as that. I can press another key, and then when I release, this is a key released method. So we have added the key listener to the frame. So that's the reason why as soon as you open the frame and then you press any key, this particular method is called, and it outputs the message in the console. All right, we can also get the character of the specific key that has been released. So we will add a line of code here. We will say system.out.println like this. And then we will simply say the character that was released is, and then we will use a method. So we will say event.getKeyChar, and then semicolon. All right, so this event must be the argument passed, all right, the key event. So we will simply change this, okay? Instead of using arg0, I want to use EVT. So that's my choice. But think that it's nicer to use EVT for event. And then get key car is actually going to return or capture the character of the key that was released. So now let me run. So when I press my key A character and then release, now you can see this is a key release method. The character that was released is A. I press B and release that. You see, this is a key release method. The character was released is B. If I press C key, you can press your keys. All right. So we can also get the code of the specific key that has been released. So here we are getting the key character. We can also say that we want to get its code. So we will simply say the code or the key code that was released is, so here instead of saying key car, we say key code. And then let me run. I'll press the key A, and then you can see here we're getting, this is a key release method. The character that was released is A. The key code that was released is 65. So 65 is the key code of the character A. So we can do that for the various characters, the key characters on our keyboard. But one thing you have to note is that certain keys, for example, the arrow key, do not return characters, but only key codes. So let me run, and then I'm going to press and release an arrow key like this. So you can see it says this is a release method. The character that was released is question mark because I pressed and one of the arrow keys. And here the key code that was released is 38. So as I said, certain keys, such as the arrow keys, do not return key characters, but only key codes. So this is the perfect example. All right, so now let us use our labels, the labels that we created here. And now we are going to see how we can move it around in our frame using the key listener. So let us come in the constructor. Down here, we are going to instantiate the label. So we say label assignment operator new J label like this, and then semicolon. We can set the background color for the label. So we say label that set background and then color. Let's say blue because I like blue. Let me import the color class. So we will say label set opaque for the background to work. Now we need to add our label manually because we set the layout to null. So we need to specify its alignment and its dimensions. So we will say label that set bounds, and here we say 200 for x-axis, 100, then 200, 200. We can set the text for our label. We say this is a label. Now let's add this to the frame. So we will say this that add a label. Now let's run. Okay, now you can see we are having our label on the screen. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to maybe reduce the dimensions. I'll say 100, 100. I will align this at the beginning of the frame. So I'll say 0 for the x-axis and 0 for the y-axis. Let me run. Now you see where the label is showing. So now if we want to move our label around the frame, depending on the key we will press. So here we are going to use our key typed method. Let's go to the key typed method. So it's down here. And as I said, this method is invoked when a key is typed. For this example, we're going to use a switch case control structure. So that would help us determine whenever you type a certain key, you have to move the label a couple of pixels, maybe to the right, to the left, to the top, or, down. We will say switch, and then we need to change the name of the event, the key event here. We'll say EVT because that's more explicit. And I would say EVT get key character. So, and then the curly braces. So in the body of our switch case, we are going to define the various cases. So I would say if the character is L, character L, then I would say label that set location. So the label that set location here is a method used for determining the location of our label. And in here, we will say label that get X. So this is normally used to return the x-axis of our label. So what we are saying here is that if you press the key character L, you need to update the location of the label. So we want here to make sure that the label is moved to the left. So we will say that we want you to reduce the x-axis of our label by 5, and then we want you to leave the y-axis of the label intact. So this is basically what this line of code means. If you press L, we want you to update the location of the label by reducing its x-axis by 5 and then leaving its y-axis the way it was before you pressed on that key. And then I will add the break statement like this. Let me run and see if this is working. So now let me press L. So you can see when I press L, it is moving to the left. So in the key released here, I can comment these lines of code because I showed you how to actually use the key released. So I'm going to define the case for the other key characters. So I'm going to say for the case here, we now want to move our label to the right. So I'm going to say if you press the key character R, and then here, I'm going to copy these 2 lines of code and then change that. Down here, I'll paste. And then here, I'm going to update the location of the label. I will increase the x-axis of the label by 5, and then I will leave its y-axis the same. So this line of code here, if we press the key character R, the label will move to the right because it is going to increase its x-axis position by 5, and then it's going to leave the y-axis the same. So let me run. Now when I press the character R, you see I'm able to move that to the right. When I press the character L, I'm being able to move that to the left. So now we're going to add some line of code that will help us determine the key event if, for example, we want to move the label down or we want to move it up. As you have understood here, if I want to move it down, I will say D, and then I'm going to update the location. So for down, I will leave the x-axis the same. So I'm going to remove this, and then I need to decrease the y-axis. So I will say -5. So if you want to move up, you need to press key character U, and then here the x-axis will remain the same, and then the y-axis must be increased by 5. Let me run. So now I can press the left, it takes me to the left. I press the R key character. If I pressed D, I made a mistake here. No, here must be, if you press D, we have to increase the y-axis. And then if you want to move it up, we have to decrease the y-axis. That was a mistake that I made. So let me run again. L takes you to the left. R takes you to the right. D takes you down. And then U takes you up. So what if we want to use the arrow keys to move the label around just like we did? So knowing that the arrow keys do not provide any key character, the method suitable for us is the key pressed method. So the key pressed method is actually invoked when a key is pressed down. So in this example, we can also use the switch case control structure, and instead of using the get key character method that we used here, we are going to use the get key code method. So what I'm going to do is that I'm simply going to copy the switch case control structure here. I will paste it in my key pressed method, and then I'm going to change the method here. So instead of get key character, I'm going to say get key code. For the key event argument, I want to change this to EVT because that's more explicit than arg0. And now here in a case, we are not going to use characters. So we will use codes. And as I told you, I want to show you how to actually use the arrow keys. So the arrow keys do not return key characters. They only return codes. So, and that's the reason why we are using the key code here. So for the cases, I'm going to use the corresponding code for my arrow key. So how do you get the code for the keys? Let me comment here. like this to avoid the errors. And then I'm going to uncomment this. All right, so I just need to get the keys, the code for my arrow keys. So let me run. When I press the up key, all right, so the last line, it says the key code that was released is 38. So for the up key is 38. So I'm gonna come here. Where did we define the code for the up key when we wanted to move the label up? I think it's the last one here, and it says that it's 38. So I'm gonna say 38 here. Let me run again. If I press the down arrow key, what is the code? It says 40. So here, this is where we define what will happen if we want to move the label down. So I'm going to say 40 like this. Let me run again. I will press the left. So it says 37. So the left, it was the first one here. So that's 37 for it. And then let me run. If I press the right arrow key, it says 39. So here I will say 39. All right, so that's how I was able to get the arrow keys. So let me comment these lines of code like this. I will uncomment the switch cases. All right, so now I can run and show you that my arrow keys are definitely working. All right, so now if I press the right arrow key, it's moving to the right. If I press the down arrow key, it's moving down. If I press the left arrow key, it's moving to the left. If I press the up arrow key, it's moving up. All right. And you know, in the key released here, instead of using the system that out that print line, we could actually use maybe the set label text. All right. Let's say, for example, that, so I'm going to comment all of this and this as well. Let's say, if you pressed a certain key, we want the program to actually set the label. So we will say label that set text. And here we will simply say key character. That will be plus evt that get key character. And then we will add some string here and we will say key code. And here we will say evt get key code. So this is normally going to set the text of our label. So now let me press, and if I press D, for example, okay, as you can see, the label has changed. I can also maybe just change color. I'll say label that set foreground, color that white. I will change its dimension 400 like this, 200. I can also maybe just work a little bit on its font. I will say set font, new font, consolas, font net bold, and then the font size, say 20. Import the font class so that now when we run, so we have our label. This is a label. Let me press the key character A. As you can see, the key character A, key code 65. If I press D, it says D. If I press H, K, Z, P, Q. If I press one of the arrow keys, you can see it shows the question mark here because the arrow key does not return key characters, but it only returns the key code. Down key says 40, and all of that. So that's what I wanted to show you. I really hope that this video was informative, and please don't forget to like, to share, and subscribe to this YouTube channel for more videos like this one. Let's meet in the next one.